Alright, a very good evening to all of you. Today will be the second part of the three parts for the eating God. And so before I proceed on, let me just do a bit of a correction from what I mentioned last week on the eating God. I think
Make sure you record, David.
You can hear what echo, is it?
No, make sure you do the recording.
Oh yes. Thank you. It is recording. So you missed the first part, yeah? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Right. So here, as we look into the output element weakens the day master. So as the output element weakens the day master, it will be considered that if it is of opposite polarity, so if the day master is yang and the output is yin, then this would be considered as harmonious production. So the harmonious production will weaken the day master a lot more. Therefore, the weakening will be a lot more. So in this context, the weakening will then be called hurting officer. So hurting officer is the one that has a harmonious production. So if we look into the eating God, so eating God would then be the same polarity. Therefore, when we have the same polarity, the production will not be too harmonious, and therefore the weakening will not be too severe. So as a result, the eating God becomes auspicious. So as we look into the eating God, we would consider that, as per what we discussed, a bit of a follow-up very quickly. The eating God is considered to be highly auspicious, as it would control the 7K. Therefore, when one has a chart that has 7 killing, it would then be considered to be useful to have eating God. So when EG controlling 7K would result in what we call a longer life or healthier. So therefore, that's called the long style of longevity. Eating God represents output, and eating God, of course, represents the engine that produces the wealth. And therefore, for these three key reasons, we then see that eating God is welcome. Eating God is auspicious. But as we explore what happens when we look into the eating God in the chart. As we look into the eating God in the chart, we can then see that eating God is a star that usually portrays an artist, portrays somebody that is creative, but behind the scene. And therefore, eating God is an introverted star. Therefore, it does not need to be protruded to the stems. It doesn't need to be protruded. When it is protruded to the stem, it then displays that one is an artist and also visible to the world. It can also be a performer. But we also see that actually for performer, one may want to consider hurting officer to be an element that is protruded, and if it is auspicious. Because hurting officer is an extrovert star, one that enjoys the limelight and would like to challenge authority. I mean, in a way, if one wants to protest, it would be good to protest in public or to be made visible. And so now, as we explore your eating God, we want to look into eating God in multiple locations and where it would denote. And so here, as we look into the eating God, we also want to consider what happens when eating God is missing. And so for female day master, eating God represents children. And therefore, as eating God represents children, missing eating God would then denote that one may have less affinity or fewer luck or lesser luck with having children. Therefore, this may be the case for female day master. And if it's missing both output, both hurting officer and eating god, then one may consider that the reading for it. And so for missing EG, especially when EG is needed or welcome. So therefore, this is where they, and then of course the feng shui will be the remedy. So if let's say we deal with a pink fire day master, if you have a pink fire day master, what would be your eating god? What would be the pink fire eating god day master? So for fire produces earth. So as a result, we will then look for Wu Earth. We will look for Wu Earth. As we will look for Wu Earth, then we will find out where would the Wu Earth be situated. Where would Earth be situated? We can find that Wu Earth can be present in several locations. Therefore, that would be favorable. And of course, we find that the Wu Earth may be situated at the Chen Dragon. We can also find the Wu Earth sitting at very much on the dock. And therefore, these are the two scenarios where we can have Wu Earth, the Wu Earth to be situated. We can also find that the Wu Earth can be manifest in the Ken, which is also the Yang Earth, so called. And so here, as we superimpose on to the location of the property, then we'll find that usually it will be considered to be the academic. Normally, it's considered to be the academic sector for the person. So for EG represents a style of creativity. EG represents scholar as it is. Therefore, that may be the academic sector. And therefore, in this context, we may see that the bedroom number 2 may be appropriate for the so-called. So this would be the Wu Earth. Right, so that would be if you look into those with missing EG. So missing EG, especially when the EG may be, yes, correct, Claudia, that is good. Wu Earth is the hurting officer for the pink fire. And therefore, sorry? No, Wu Earth is the eating god. It's the eating god for the pink fire. It's a same element. Eating god is the same element, while hurting officer is the opposite. All right. And therefore, for female day masters who wish to conceive, therefore the eating god, the output star represents the favorable pillar. Therefore, this way we may look into activation, we look into spending time, we look into where the placement can be. So therefore, output star is normally favorable, and so one would like to seek to generate that kind of energy for the day master. Now, output star. And now let's take a look into the negative aspect of the 10 elements. At the end of the day, we do share this world with killers, psychotic. We do share this world with robbers and all kinds of people. And so it may be best to explore all. Sorry, Claudia, you raised your hand. You can just key in if that's the case. Right. So here, as we look into the downside of output star, as I try to bring the analogy of the comparing Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis, we do see that the psychoanalysis brings output star to be the id, and while the wealth to be the ego, and the officer to be the superego. And basically the resource is the mother, the mother. Right. So we did discuss about resource in graveyard. So when the resource is in graveyard, this may indicate a negative mother relationship, where we can find that we discuss if the resource is in the graveyard. And so as we look into output and we look into it. Now the concept of it based on Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis basically is manifest in children, Basically from the early part. So according to Sigmund Freud, in his psychoanalysis, when babies are born, babies manifest completely it. Therefore, it is natural, or the first step when it is born. Ego and superego will come later, especially when the person becomes more aware of circumstances, more aware of the situation that surrounds it. So it is very much selfish. And so output stars are quite selfish. Both eating God and hurting officer, they are in the first part prioritize their needs, like a baby. So if a baby is hungry, cry. If a baby is discomfort, cry. And therefore, output stars are expressive of their needs, expressive of their desires, expressive. So as they're expressive, that is where they become creative. So that is why we find that many output stars are artists. So that's why we consider them to be artists, or we consider them to be performer. So Joey Yap's description, of course, we call eating God artist. And hurting officer has performer. So being an artist or a performer, both are in an industry where you express your personality, your feelings, your desires, and therefore they are people who are expressive. As they are expressive, and once it's negative, they become selfish, they become impatient, like a baby. If a baby is hungry, the baby wants things now. They want it now. And they are not patient enough to wait. And well, of course, we do see that the opposite to the officer. So the officer, of course, understands that in order to get what you want, you need to be patient and you need to plan carefully to balance with the needs of others. Therefore, that's where officer tends to look for rules, especially direct officer. So direct officer looks into bureaucracy, look into rules in how one shall plan and control yourself. So in this case, when we look into eating God in extreme negative, once it becomes extremely negative, then it may be what we call the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde syndrome. And so here we see that, especially when both of them are present, when the eating God, known as food, and Shang, known as Ham, therefore this means that there's an eating God, and this is EG, so this is an EG, hurting God, confusion. So very similar to direct officer and seven killing, similar to direct resource and indirect resource, these two output stars will have their own confusion, the same. And so this confusion indicates that why is there a confusion? because eating God is introvert. Eating God is introvert. And while hurting officer is extrovert. So hurting officer, when negative, can become a monster, a Karen. Hurting officer can be rebellious, can be aggressive, and can resort to violence. And while eating God, seldom. Eating God is more refined. Eating God will be more polite, more of an introvert. And so having these two tends to be confusion. So that's where in the last sharing, we look into identifying which would be more dominant. So if things are proper and if the elements are favorable, then knowing one is dominant or not, just discover that one is more extrovert or introvert, one is more expressive for that. And so here we consider that now when things are hidden in the graveyard, when things hidden in the graveyard. So when things are hidden in the graveyard, then eating God or hurting officer may lead to what we deem as some kind of multiple personalities, multiple distinct personalities, dissociative mental health issues. But of course, not all of them would have. Therefore, this may be the case of the early symptoms of depression, delusion, memory loss, and usually, of course, by past trauma. So past trauma, especially when witnessed in the year period, during the year period. So let's take a look into this person by the name of Adam Duritz. So Adam Duritz, if you look into the natal chart, will be a Ren water day master. Ren water born at the end of summer, is weak, out of season. Without knowing the hour pillar, here so far, Ren water is not rooted. Except, of course, with a little bit of Kueh water, with the Kueh water that you can see here as well. So with a minor Kueh water to be seen, it may have some partial rooting. Alright, so bottom line, we have a weak day master. So with a very weak day master, water day master born in summer, we can then see here that, of course, when we look into today's topic, we will be referring to EG. So where do we find the EG? We'll find the EG to be at the year. So therefore, you can see that for the rainwater, the Jiawood would be the EG. And also by following the Shen chart, it will be also a heavenly virtue. Therefore, we find that the wood will be favorable. And wood, of course, also will be weak, but slightly relatively stronger than water. Well, water will be the exact threat. So while weak would, of course, be slightly dominant. Okay, so anyway, EG in the year pillar protruded to the stem, unrooted as it may be. We then consider that it does have partial rooting, but when there's partial rooting, of course, we'll be referring to the rooting with the hurting officer. So we can find that there's hurting officer. The Yi. So therefore, the would be the hurting officer. So here we see the presence of both eating god and hurting officer. If it's the other way around, maybe not too bad. If hurting officer is protruded, not too bad. But here, the introvert style is the facade for the public, and while the hurting officer is hidden in the branches, and not just any branch, but earth branches. And so we find them hidden in the dragon, has a graveyard, and hidden in the goat, has a tomb. And therefore here, especially when it is hidden. Right, so in a way, we can say that this would be a pillar to which we do see the presence of both the hurting officer and eating god in this natal chart, and also on the same pillar itself. And so this may be here we can see that there's eating god and hurting officer confusion. Now this confusion in normal sense. So when we read ordinary charts, when we read normal people, it may just mean that the difficulty in expressing yourself, difficulty in managing your temperament. Because if output is not managed properly, then it may come across the person being rude, being ill-mannered, being aggressive and demanding, basically annoying baby. I mean, when adults continue to behave like children, it tends to annoy people and the backslash from it. So not able to express yourself. Now, of course, we do consider that this person has a few good points. And one of the good points can be that there is direct resource. So direct resource controlling eating god. So there's a sin metal controlling the jiawood. So with this control, it can be regulated. So as it's regulated, the eating god can still be useful. And so eating god is useful for this day master, especially also when there are plenty of earth around. And because this will be the dragon year and the goat month, these are earth. So we need wood to control the earth, and the metal here controls the earth. So naturally, being the fasa, we can find that the person is a composer. So being a composer usually is a typical EG. Composer is an EG manifestation. And so here the person is a singer, is a composer, that means basically quite commonly found for performers, for people with output stars. But here later, of course, it would be deemed that he has proclaimed what we call dissociative mental health issues. And of course, he disclosed this publicly in the year 2008. So having these dissociative mental issues normally means sometimes what we call multiple personality disorder. Right, so that would be when we find output stars, or generally output stars in graveyard stars. All right, now take a look into yet another. We have Roseanne Barr, which is a comedian. And so now as we look into this day master, this would be a Kuei water day master born in autumn. So Kuei water born in autumn would be strong. So we are looking to a strong day master. And this day master is rooted. And so here, if you can look, what would be the eating god of a Kuei water day master? And where would we find eating god? So we find them in the year hour. So we find it also. Now this lady here, all the four pillars are graveyard pillars. Wow, she hits the royal flush in terms of having whole set of graveyards from beginning to the end. One of each. The dragon, the dog, therefore here we find that when we have earth and earth, there will be the full set of clash. The dragon clashes with the dog, the goat clashes with the ox, and then they form bullying punishment, they form destruction. therefore indicating that throughout her whole entire life, you'll be facing one earthquake after another. But here we do find that she has a Rockwell fasa. Therefore, that would be an extrovert with a 7 killing onto the hour. So indicating quite an active, an active, aggressive kind of personality. So anyway, here, let's take a look. Does she have any, can we find whether she has any hurting officer or not? No, she doesn't have any hurting officer. So if it doesn't have any hurting officer, then here as we continue, let's take a look into number one. So basically, if we follow the ordinary sense of the simple first instant point, then having a strong day master, we find that you will then find the eating god hurting officer to be favorable. But we do see here that in this chart, there are also quite some element of water. That means there's quite a lot of water in this chart. And a lot of metal and earth for the chart. And so here we'll find that the wood is actually weak. So wood is very, very weak. So anyway, what happens, of course, as we look into the continuation to the luck pillar. So now we look into the arrival of the luck pillar. In the first arrival of the luck pillar, we then find that for a Kuei water day master, what would be this pillar? So what would be this pillar? So this pillar to her would be a Jia-yin, which is hurting officer sitting on hurting officer. So hurting officer sitting on the hurting officer. They come in. And so this will be the case where we can then see that it may be a case of the day master meeting hurting officer into the chart. And in the case of hurting officer, it may actually introduce an element that is favorable for her career, favorable in sense that she's able to use it for her performance and otherwise. But as she move on to the following pillar, we'll find that she has the pillar which is the Yimao. And for the case of the Yimao, would then be to her eating god sitting on her eating god. Eating god and eating god. So this will be quite a pure wood pillar. So wood pillar, then we can find, of course, when the eating god is activated. It's activated to the graveyard. Activation of the graveyard. So anyway, there will be then, you can see that she would then announce in 1994, which is also is the year of the Jiaxi, which is also the hurting officer hurting officer year in the eating god luck pillar. So eating god luck pillar. And so she announced that she has been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder, and she has multiple personalities. And so here we will consider that by the end of the luck pillar, so by the end of year 2001, as this luck pillar passes over, then she finds that she has been cured. She has overcome this. So having the ability to overcome, in a way, bipolar also correct. So for luck pillar, of course, now 10 years is very substantial. Every luck pillar is, a luck pillar is, of course, a very major event, a very, very major effect. But at the end, it will still be one that passes. Unlike, of course, the natal. So if it is born in the natal, then whole life. But if it is a luck pillar, then it will come, it will go. And so she was. Of course, these two people are known for their performance. They are public figures that have gained fame. But of course, this indicates the difficulty in expressing oneself. So in a way, I think, of course, we are just looking for very extreme cases, where what happens when the element is in the graveyard, so to speak. All right, so here we find that for her, all her branches are graveyard branches, all of them. And also, of course, she also claimed that she has this due to her childhood abuse, caused by childhood. And we can see childhood abuse maybe when the eating god is in the graveyard in the year pillar, because as you know, childhood is in the year pillar. So when eating god or even output stars to a certain level appearing to be on the year. But we also find that she would have indirect resource being trapped, indirect resource being trapped, indirect wealth being trapped. So this may be in a way the parents. For the female, this would be the mother in a way, the mother related. So therefore, that's where we find that many elements are being trapped and hidden in graveyard. Tends to be. All right. So anyway, we explore the manifestation of the. We look into both the spectrum of those who can utilize a thing called favorably, and those who can't. And even for those who can utilize favorably, but we do find that they do experience personality issues. You can find that actually, if you look into all these three characters here that we discussed, they do have some awkward, they don't come across to be very natural people when they talk to you. They tend to have a little bit aloof. So therefore, they may be somewhat the eating god kind of a manifestation itself. But other than that, of course, in normal sense, they are pretty much good, decent people. Right. So which is better now? So which is better? Hurting officer or eating god? Which is better? So when we look into these two, and if they are not in the graveyard, they're not in the graveyard, even though we do find that in this context, let's take a look into this Sin Metal Day Master. So for the Sin Metal Day Master, the Kueh Water would be the EG. So where would we find the EG? So the EG may be hidden in the hour, but while hurting officer is protruded. Hurting officer is protruded to the step. So to determine this chart whether which is more dominant, this Sin Metal is born in summer, therefore it is weak, out of season. It has some rooting. It has some rooting in the year, rooting in the day, partial rooting in the month, so somewhat a bit strong. And furthermore, there is a snake and there's a rooster, so you do have the 四羽丑 mentality. The snake, the rooster, so therefore also providing some strength to the day master. But in a way, there is also a saying that goes by the fact that Sin Metal attains its glow. So Sin Day Master welcomes water. Sin Day Master welcomes the Ren water, because as metal washed by water shine, therefore it becomes very useful. So maybe this may be considered to be what we call a little bit of an exceptional chart, special in the sense that Sin Metal welcomes Ren water. And so hurting officer would be favorable for this particular chart. But reading into the chart, we can also see that when the person reaches an old age, There might be fear of dementia, fear of, well, basically it's a memory loss. It's a memory loss kind of Alzheimer, kind of a reading. If you can find that the dissociative disorder may be also manifest. We do see that sign usually when hurting officer and eating God is in the same pillar. In the same pillar. So if it's the same pillar, normally it has a stronger manifestation there itself. Alright, so anyway, that would be considering reading for hurting officer and eating God. No? That comes along. Okay, now let's move on to, let's take a look into the element on the primer. So once again, we want to explore. Now let's come back to something more generic, as we now see that if the output element is favorable and strong. So usually when output element is favorable and strong, we do not expect the day master to be very weak. We do consider that the day master needs to be reasonably strong. Needs to be at least relatively strong. Relatively strong. Just like in this context that we looked into earlier, that when we have the sin metal and we also have the run water. So here we find that we do find that the sin metal is born in summer, would then be weak, but the water element is also weaker. So therefore, sometimes we do see that it can be relatively strong. Or at least, anyway, that chart doesn't show that both are strong. Okay, so if the output element is favorable and strong, and the day master is also relatively strong, saying that is because when the output is strong and dominant, it weakens the day master. Therefore, relatively strong means not so weakened, not weakened at all. In that case here, output stars are favorable. Therefore, we deem that these are very talented people, creative, innovative. So they have a strong desire to succeed. They are very motivated. And of course, this indicates that they can then generate wealth. So with a very strong favorable element, we can then say that they have the capability of generating wealth. Generating wealth. Right now, next, as we explore the output element, favorable, but then it becomes weak. As it becomes weak, we normally measure or consider that the talents are hidden, yet to grow. And of course, the person may struggle to focus. So we can then see that if the element is still favorable but weak. So they struggle to focus, inability to pay attention. And not just inability to pay attention, but here we do see that if it's weak, it is not willing to go all out. Because here we do find that many of them are, those with output sacrifices their lives. They sacrifice themselves. So it's going to take a look into the output element. Now, what do you mean by sacrifice themselves? Of all, we can find that the wood. If you're a wood day master, what is your output star? Fire. Therefore, wood day masters, they are willing to sacrifice their life for their art, for their output. Because fire consumes wood. So as fire consumes the wood, then they consume the entire day master. Therefore, as we look into, these are the symbolism of an artist that's able to be so devoted to their art that they sacrifice their future, sacrifice their money or stable job. That means they just go all out. Therefore, this will be wood all the way to fire. And if we look into earth, earth produces metal. And therefore, as we consider when metal is extracted from the earth becomes weak. The earth becomes weakened because mining. So we talk about mining, we talk about bringing earth out, metal out from earth. So earth becomes hollow. So therefore, that's also sacrificial. This would be symbolism like a mother earth that gives all out for her children. And for a female day master, output represents her children. So the sacrifice of the mother, sacrifice her body, sacrifice her future, and so on. So you can find that would be a symbolism of a day master producing output or day master weakened to it. And of all, these two are the more fierce type. They're more fierce type. And therefore, if the output is favorable and weak, then we can see that this will be more manifest. More manifest. Now we take a look into now what happens when the output element is unfavorable but strong. So if the output element is unfavorable but strong, therefore this is where wrong direction. Not to say wrong direction, but to say that as an artist, has a very dedicated, obsessed artist. But it's just so that it diminishes the day master. It takes away. And therefore this may be the part where the person is very, but somehow the goals are unrealistic. And so this would be a case where it's an artist that is disillusioned, an artist that is weak, an artist that is a so-called artist that has not been successful. So the frustration of not being noticed may come to mind. And especially when we do find, let's say, for example, fire day master. Fire produces what? Fire produces earth. And therefore, if the earth is strong, if the earth is unfavorable, the earth will cover the fire. So earth put out the fire. Therefore, that be it. And fire people are also passionate, and pink fire people are stubborn. So they're stubborn. Continue to do the same thing again and again. And then pink fire people can also be stubborn and very opinionated to a certain degree. And now as we look into the other two, now the other two day masters, they are a little bit different. We take a look into metal. A metal day master produces water. But here we do see that metal doesn't really produces water. Metal attracts water, as in a form of condensation. So in this context here, metal and water, and also water and wood. Water and wood in the case also may represent betrayal. It represents the hand that bites, the hand that the one that bites the hand that feeds it. Therefore, may be considered. Because here water diminishes when it feeds into the wood. And so these two are of all the 5 elements, these two are the least creative of all. They're the least creative. So they are least creative. Of course, they can be very creative. They can go on to become. They all can all become. But normally, as we look into water and wood, there's a sense of a betrayal. There's a sense that they are not, in a way, I can see that they perhaps need not take advantage of the output so much, because they don't really feel the kind of an affinity to it. Okay, so here as you look into day masters that are weak and unfavorable. Of course, if the output is weak and it is not favorable, then this would indicate the person has very little output, very little production. Then they do not really have much drive. They don't really have much goals. They are not really productive at work. Therefore, in a way, they can become lazy. Because here we consider those with output to be impatient. Output are impatient people. And being impatient means they're efficient. Therefore, once output is weak and unfavorable, tends to show that the person is inefficient. So therefore, those without output are often inefficient people. So they take their time, they procrastinate, and they're not really go-getters as it is. Right. And so let's now take a look into the interactions of eating God with other of the gods, and we can see how this becomes Okay, generally now as we consider what happens when we find an eating god countering a 7 killing star. So more often than not, we do find that eating god countering 7 star can be positive. Can be positive. But somehow we may want to put in mind that that of course for the male, for male day master, what represents the children? So for male day master, the officer represents the children, and therefore eating god countering 7 killing may consider this to be somewhat a strained relationship with children. Can be look into that as well. So this will be the interaction when we find eating god countering a 7 killing star. So overall it's positive. Overall, eating god counters a 7 killing, especially when 7 killing star is strong. Therefore, it reduces its effect. And now, I also come to a full circle. Let's come to a full circle. If you can remember that indirect resource is known as the owl, and therefore the owl steals the food. And so now, we come to the other side when we have the eating god clash with indirect resource. Can be considered to be inauspicious. But when eating god is inauspicious by itself, then the indirect resource, when it controls the eating god, the benefit of it now may be to remove the moodiness. And then it may bring a bit of a balance to the day master as well. Now, as you look into the eating god producing wealth, then yes, this would be auspicious in a sense. Auspicious that we want eating god to produce wealth. So with this would be considered that when they produces wealth, then they would be apt, they would be skillful in managing their finances. So we do find that they could be capable of investment. So eating god producing wealth can also make a very good investor. Because eating God is meticulous, eating God is a strategist. So a strategist producing wealth would be considered favorable. And also we consider that eating God weakening the Rockwell star. So Rockwell star is one that is perceived to be negative or an indirect star that may manifest greed, and therefore eating God weakening Rockwell star becomes auspicious. So the individual has less level of greed, less level of tendency to steal or controls the wealth. But of course, we do consider that eating God, when it is negative, may also tends to indulge in fantasies and daydreams. Because here it may also indicate that eating God weakening the Rockwell star would also does not produce wealth, or in that sense. Right, so this would be some of the reading for eating God countering some of the stars that we can see here. Alright, so this wraps up on our today's sharing, and I can see you continue in the chat. So I'll see you next week for the final chapter, the final part for eating God, as we look into the part where eating God sits on the other 10 gods. Right, so with this, I'll wrap it up. I'll see you then. Thank you very much.